Welcome to the Catalyst Sale podcast. This is a continuation of the series that we started last week, focused on specific topics that you're either thinking about now or will be thinking about shortly in the future. I brought Brent back on because it would be really weird for me to talk about execution and ask the questions and then answer those questions at the same time. I do that enough in my own head. So Brent, thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to be inside your head and playing you for today. It's always been a dream of mine.
Me too.
So let's jump into this today. I remember these questions, except when you were talking to me, we talked about community. But for you, because of your expertise, we're going to talk about execution today. So what is execution?
I think execution is pretty simple. It's just about getting things done, getting the thing done that you want to get done or that you have decided you're going to get done. So it's the process of actually getting work done, getting activities done. This could be moving weight. This could be moving the car out of the driveway. This could be executing on a business plan that you've established that carries over a long period of time. So execution is about getting things done regardless of time frame.
Now I know why you asked me to be the one to interview you, because you know how good I am at execution.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the mistakes we make? So it's obviously an issue for a lot of people. I can speak from experience, but why do we make these mistakes with execution?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistakes we make is we take on too much. We think, hey, you know what? I can do a lot of this stuff. I can lose 15 pounds. I can lower my golf score. I can increase the amount of revenue that I'm going to bring into the business. I can build out better work-life balance. I can do all of these things rather than just kind of staying focused on maybe one thing, doing that really well, then moving on to the next one. The one, I think we take on too much. Two, I don't think we really define that thing that we're executing on. Like the whole idea of, hey, I want to lose 15 pounds. Okay, that's pretty easy. You can see a number, it's pretty clear. Or I want to generate 2x revenue. That's pretty easy. I can see it, it's pretty clear. But what we forget to do is there's a lot of parts between where we are today and that 15 pounds. And it doesn't just happen overnight. It's not about flipping the switch. So I think we take on too much. And I don't think we focus enough on the thing, on what that thing is or the parts that are necessary to accomplish in order to lead to execution.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of answers my next question, is that how do we avoid these mistakes? So number one, you might say that we need to define the problem first.
That is a clear thing that we need to do. And it's actually the focus of these recordings that we're doing. We're talking about individual topics and we're defining the problem or defining the challenge or defining the topic first, and then moving on or building from there. So let's define what that objective is. Let's get general agreement among the team around what that objective means, and then let's build toward accomplishing that objective. So one, we've got to be able to define things. Two, as we define things, let's ask more questions. Ask some basic questions. Okay, what is this thing we're working on? Why do we need to do it? How are things going to change if we actually do it? How will we know if we're successful? When do we expect to be successful? These are the common who, what, where, when, why, how questions. We've got to go deeper into these items. That'll help us avoid common mistakes and improve our capability to execute.
So when we're all trying to transition to work from home now, or working remotely more often than we have in the past, when we're thinking about execution, does that change at all as far as these particular times we're in?
Conceptually, it doesn't change. I mean, like the foundational items that you're walking through, do this, take X number of steps to get to the top of the mountain, take X number of steps to get to 1,000 meters or 10,000 meters or whatever the metric is that you're moving toward. So conceptually, they don't change. However, what we've got to remember is now there's a lot of noise that's getting in the way, a lot of distraction, where maybe you were able to work on 3 projects over a period of time and felt comfortable with it. Maybe now give yourself a little bit more freedom and focus on just one or focus on 2. Realize that there's going to be a lot of noise. That noise is probably going to get in the way of the timing how long it takes you. You might have been able to execute on things faster a couple of weeks ago when you had that time when you were commuting between your house and the office and you had some time to think about it. Now in this environment, you don't have that same commute time. So give yourself the space and understand that that it may take longer. There's an Admiral Payne quote. It's do your best and forgive yourself. So do your best and forgive yourself.
I love that. It is fantastic. So, how does this apply in the context of when we're thinking about execution, the context of teams? Let's start there.
Yeah. So from a team perspective, and here we're talking about your internal team. So these are people inside your organization. You're either their direct leader or you're paying them, whatever it is, but they're part of your organization. When it comes to those folks, you've got a little bit of background, you've got better insight, better line of sight into the things that they're going through. You probably have had conversations, you know a little bit about their family situation. You don't know everything because you're not seeing them as often as you might have seen them in an office environment, but you're a bit closer to them. Give yourself a little bit more space with communication. Realize that you're using other tools. You may not see a lot of the nonverbal, depending on if you're using Zoom or you're using a meeting utility. You may end up doing some of the stuff on phone, or you may have more interaction on Slack or inside collaborative tools. Give yourself a little bit of space for the communication that takes place, and give them a little bit of time, just like you're giving yourself some time in your house relative to some of the things that you're executing against. Remember, they're going to need a little bit of time. They're dealing with something that you may know or may not know.
Yeah. And so, what about customers? How do we deal with our customers when we're working from home and we're used to going into their office or going to see them, face to face in person? How does that change?
It's another one of those things where imagine if you're trying to push a rock up the hill and you've got your hands on the rock and you can kind of push the rock up the hill, and that's easy, or it's easier. Now imagine trying to push that rock up a hill with a piece of rope. Not going to work out very well. You could pull it with the rope, but you're going to have a really hard time pushing it up the hill with the rope. So your customers are now an extension just a little bit further. They've got not only all of the things that they're dealing with in their home life, but they're also dealing with all of the things that they're dealing with the business life. So give them even a little bit more time and space. Ask better questions of them. Clarify what the priorities are. 2 weeks ago, you may have had 3 priorities that were focused on for the quarter. Now you may only have 1 priority that you're focused on for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Focus on that and use that as your where you pay attention from an execution perspective.
Yeah, and get that done. It's an excellent point. So what about ourselves? How does this, and we've talked a little bit about it, but how do we take care of ourselves in this process?
Yeah, I think go back to the Admiral Payne quote. Give yourself the freedom, like do the work, do your best, and then forgive yourself. Give yourself the freedom, just a little bit of extra space, and evaluate that over time. So, for me, one way that I try to avoid blind spots, which can get in the way of an ability to execute on things, is I ask a lot of questions. Sometimes people think it's an endearing quality. Sometimes people think it turns me into a jerk or that I am a jerk. But I'm neither a jerk nor am I endearing. But ask those questions of yourself. Really evaluate things. Is this thing that important? Where does this fit in the overall scheme of things? How am I prioritizing this stuff? And how can I give myself a little bit more freedom for time?
Do you have any extra tips just quickly here before we wrap up on if from a leadership perspective, if we're talking about this as a leader, right? We're talking about ourselves and the teams that we're on and whatnot, but if you're a leader of people and you're transitioning a whole entire team and you're trying to think about execution and how you're making that happen as a leader, what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about?
Well, I think the scariest thing, and I see this in a couple of the different chats that I'm involved in, is that some leaders are starting to look at this and saying, "My team is now working from home. How do I know they're doing the work?" Okay, well, what metrics should I be looking at to determine if they're doing the work? Well, why don't we focus on the outcomes, the actual thing that they're supposed to deliver? So, from a sales perspective, focus on the numbers. And now we're dealing in a different time, depending on what organizations or industries you're selling into. If you're selling into healthcare right now and the thing that you're selling are not N95 masks or mission critical related items, you probably shouldn't waste a lot of their time with conversations that aren't going to have a positive impact on their business. And you shouldn't do that in general, but now be
Yeah.
extra sensitive. So when it comes to the team, just be sensitive to what people are working on, where they're spending time, give them freedom, ask questions with the intent to understand, put those systems in place. Maybe it's a Google Doc where it allows a level of collaboration relative to a project that someone's working on because you don't have CRM or Trello or some other kind of system already in place. Leverage the systems and tools that are there. And I think the key piece to remember as you put yourself in their shoes, and we talked about this with the empathy piece, as you put yourself in their shoes, remember they're dealing with a lot of stuff. So as they're dealing with a lot of stuff, help them minimize the scope of this thing they're working on, shrink it down into the smaller parts, focus on those parts first, execute on those, and then move on to the next one. Don't try to solve problem 5 if you have not yet solved for problem 1. And know that your team is probably dealing with a high level of stress. They're seeing that a lot of people are losing their jobs, that organizations are closing down, that the economy is going up and down. I mean, the stock market is up 11% today, which is amazing to see that kind of a rally. Realize we're all dealing with a lot of noise and we process it in different ways. Be there for your team, ask questions, make sure they know you're available, and just give yourself a little bit of space.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for letting me be in your space today.
Awesome. Well, Brent, thanks for asking the questions. And thank you all for listening. Thanks for sharing this with others. If there are other topics you'd like me to bring an expert on and discuss, or go deeper into any of the topics that we've talked about, make those a bit more conversational like we usually do with the podcast, I'm happy to do it. Just let me know in via LinkedIn or via Twitter or via the live chat. The live chat goes directly into our Slack instance. Brent, thanks.
You're welcome.